as surely the whole country knows now, accused by Professor Anita Hill of sexually harassing her when he was the head of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the government agency where one would file a complaint of sexual harassment if one felt they had been victimized by it. The country has not heard from Judge Thomas in person all week, though he did issue a statement denying all the charges against him. Sometime after Judge Thomas testifies, Professor Hill will be called. This is a moment of great challenge for the U.S. Senate. The Judiciary Committee stands accused of not taking these charges seriously when they were made. And this week at least, virtually the entire Senate stands accused of being indifferent to women's rights. There is the committee room. This is Judge Thomas and his wife leaving their home in Washington earlier today to come to Capitol Hill. Most of the members of the Judiciary Committee have now gathered in the committee hearing room. At Senator Biden, the chairman of the committee, he himself personally stands accused of not having handled this at all well. To his left, Strom Thurmond, the ranking Republican. Enormous crowd gathered in Washington, great tension there and to a large extent in the rest of the country. As the judge arrives on Capitol Hill for us, ABC's Jim Wooten. Jim, they've been fighting up to the last moment, even over the order of who will testify, correct?
Exactly, Peter. It has been an all-night affair trying to decide the order of testimony and who will testify and when. And even now, just as these hearings are about to begin, there is no real word on who will follow Judge Thomas in the witness chair.
If there's not absolute order and decorum in here, we will recess the hearing, and those who engage in any outburst at all will be asked to leave the chamber. Good morning, Judge. Today, the Senate Judiciary Committee is meeting to hear evidence on sexual harassment charges that have been made against Judge Clarence Thomas, who has been nominated to be an associate judge of the Supreme Court. I want to speak very briefly about the circumstances that have caused us to convene these hearings. We are here today to hold open hearings on Professor Anita Hill's allegations concerning Judge Thomas. This committee's handling of her charges has been criticized. Professor Hill has made two requests to this committee. First, she has asked us to investigate her charges against Judge Thomas. And second, she had asked that these charges remain confidential, that they not be made public and not shared with anyone beyond this committee. I believe that we have honored both her requests. Some have asked, how could you have the United States Senate vote on Judge Thomas's nomination and leave senators in the dark about Professor Hill's charges? And to this I answer, how can you expect us to have forced Professor Hill, against her will, into the blinding light which you see here today? But I'm deeply sorry that our actions in this respect have been seen by many across this country as a sign that this committee does not take the charge of sexual harassment seriously. We emphatically do. I hope we all learn from the events of the past week. As one person who has spent the past 2 years attempting to combat violence of all kinds against women through legislative efforts, I can assure you that I take the charge of sexual harassment seriously. The committee's ability to investigate and hold hearings on Professor Hill's charges has now dramatically changed by the events which forced Professor Hill, against her wishes, to publicly discuss these charges. The landscape has changed. We are, thus, here today, freed from the restrictions which had previously limited our work. Sexual harassment is a serious matter, and in my view, any person guilty of this offense is unsuited to serve not only on the nation's highest court, but any position of responsibility, of high responsibility in or out of government. Sexual harassment of working women is an issue of national concern. But that said, let me make clear that this is not, I emphasize, this is not a hearing about the extent and nature of sexual harassment in America. That question is for a different sort of meeting of this or any other committee. This is a hearing convened for a specific purpose: to air specific allegations against one specific individual. Allegations which may be true or may not be true. Whichever may be the case, this hearing has not been convened to investigate the widespread problem, and it is indisputably widespread, the widespread problem of sexual harassment in this country. Those watching these proceedings will see witnesses being sworn and testifying pursuant to a subpoena. But I want to emphasize that this is not a trial. This is not a courtroom. At the end of our proceedings, there will be no formal verdict of guilt or innocence, nor any finding of civil liability. Because this is not a trial, the proceedings will not be conducted the way in which a sexual harassment trial would be handled in a court of law. For example, on the advice of the nonpartisan Senate Legal Counsel, the rules of evidence that apply in courtrooms will not apply here today. Thus, evidence in questions that would not be permitted in a court of law must, under Senate rules, be allowed here. This is a fact-finding hearing, and our purpose is to help our colleagues in the United States Senate determine whether Judge Thomas should be confirmed to the Supreme Court. We are not here, or at least I am not here, to be an advocate for one side or the other with respect to the specific allegations which we will review. And it is my hope and belief that my colleagues here today share that view. Achieving fairness in the atmosphere in which these hearings are being held may be the most difficult task at least I have ever undertaken in my close to 19 years in the United States Senate. Each of us in this committee has already stated how he will vote on Judge Thomas's nomination. The committee, as the Senate rules require, has already voted in this committee on whether or not Judge Thomas should be on the court. Each of us has already said whether we think Judge Thomas should or should not be a Supreme Court justice for reasons related to or unrelated to charges we will listen to today. And in this setting, it will be easy and perhaps understandable for the witnesses to fear unfair treatment. But it is my job as chairman to ensure as best as I possibly can fair treatment. And that is what I intend to do. So let me make 3 ground rules clear for all of my colleagues. First, while legal counsel, who's sitting behind me, has advised that the rules of evidence do not apply here, counsel has also advised the chair that the chair does have the power to rule out of order questions that are not relevant to our proceedings. Certain subjects are simply irrelevant to the issue of harassment, namely, the private conduct, out of the workplace, relationships, and intimate lives and practices of Judge Thomas, Professor Hill, and any other witness that comes before us. Thus, as chairman, I will not allow questions on matters totally irrelevant to our investigation of the professional relationship of Judge Thomas and any woman who has been employed by him. The committee is not here to put Judge Thomas or Professor Hill on trial. I hope my colleagues will bear in mind that the best way to do our job is to ask questions that are non-judgmental and open-ended, and attempt to avoid questions that badger and harass any witness. Second, while I have less discretion than a judge in a trial to bar inappropriate or embarrassing questions, all of the witnesses should know that they have a right under Senate Rule 26.5 to ask that the committee go into closed session if a question requires an answer that is, quote, a clear invasion of their right to privacy, end of quote. The committee will take very seriously the request of any witness to answer particularly embarrassing questions as they view it, whether or not it's embarrassing, to answer those questions in private. Third, the order of questioning. Because this is an extraordinary hearing, Democrats and Republicans have each taken the step of designating a limited number of senators to question for the committee. On the Democratic side, our questioners will be Senators Heflin, Leahy, and myself. As I understand it, on the Republican side, the questioners will be the ranking member, Senator Hatch, and Senator Specter. That means making sure that we do not in any way mislead anyone as to the nature of the proceeding and how it will proceed. In closing, I want to reiterate my view that the primary responsibility of this committee is fairness. That means making sure that we do not victimize any witness who appears here and that we treat every witness with respect. And without making any judgment about the specific witnesses we will hear from today, fairness means understanding what a victim of sexual harassment goes through, why victims often do not report such crimes, why they often believe that they should not or cannot leave their jobs. Perhaps 14 men sitting here today cannot understand these things fully. I know there are many people watching today who suspect we never will understand. But fairness means doing our best to understand, no matter what we do or do not believe about the specific charges, that we're going to listen as closely as we can at these hearings. Fairness also means that Judge Thomas must be given a full and fair opportunity to confront these charges against him, to respond fully, to tell us his side of the story, and to be given the benefit of the doubt. In the end, this hearing may resolve much or it may resolve little, but there are two things that cannot remain in doubt after this hearing is over. First, that the members of this committee are fair and have been fair to all witnesses. And second, that we take sexual harassment as a very serious concern in this hearing and overall. So let us perform our duties with a full understanding of what I have said and of our responsibilities to the Senate, to the nation, and to the truth. I yield now to my colleague from South Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, we have taken the unusual step of reconvening this committee in order to consider further testimony regarding the nomination of Judge Clarence Thomas to be a Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. We're here this morning to attempt to discern the truth in some rather extraordinary allegations made against this nominee, and because Judge Thomas has requested an opportunity to refute these allegations and restore his good name. Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I want to emphasize that the charge of sexual harassment is a grave one, and one that each senator on this committee takes with the utmost seriousness. This is an issue of great sensitivity, and there is no doubt in my mind that this is difficult for everyone involved. Both Judge Thomas and Professor Hill find themselves in the unenviable position of having to discuss very personal matters in a very public forum. I want to assure them at the outset that they will be dealt with fairly. This will be an exceedingly uncomfortable process for us all, but a great deal hangs in the balance, and our duty is clear. We must find the truth. I would like to commend Chairman Biden, who worked with me to ensure that this hearing would be conducted fairly. After consulting with each member on my side, I have decided that Senator Hatch will conduct the questioning of Judge Thomas. I've also decided, after consultation, that Senator Specter will undertake the questioning of Professor Hill and the other witnesses. I reserve the privilege of preparing the questions myself. I want to make it clear that every Republican member of this committee has been deeply involved in this process from the day Judge Thomas was nominated by President Bush. However, in the interest of time and fairness to all the witnesses, I believe the procedures that have been outlined will work best for everyone involved. Over 100 days ago, when President Bush nominated Judge Thomas, this committee undertook a thorough and far-reaching investigation of his background. That investigation turned up nothing questionable about the judge, but rather showed him to be an individual of great character and accomplishment. During the original confirmation hearings, this committee heard testimonies from over 100 witnesses, both for and against the nomination. Not one of these witnesses, even those most bitterly opposed to this nomination, had one disparaging comment to make about Clarence Thomas's moral character. On the contrary, witness after witness spoke of the impeccable character, abiding honesty, and consummate professionalism which Judge Thomas has shown throughout his career. In conclusion, I want to comment briefly about the allegations that have been raised by Professor Hill. The alleged harassment she describes took place some 10 years ago. During that time, she continued to initiate contact with Judge Thomas in an apparently friendly manner. In addition, Professor Hill chose to publicize her allegations the day before the full Senate would have voted to confirm Judge Thomas. While I fully intend to maintain an open mind during today's testimony, I must say that the timing of these statements raises a tremendous number of questions which must be dealt with, and I can assure all the witnesses that we shall be unstinting in our effort to ascertain the truth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now, before I swear Judge Thomas, I ask the police officer to go to the front of that door. While Judge Thomas is speaking, do not let anyone in or anyone out. He's entitled to absolute quiet in this room, no matter who it is that comes in. Judge, would you stand to be sworn? Judge, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Judge, you have an opening statement. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Thurman, members of the committee. As excruciatingly difficult as the last 2 weeks have been, I welcome the opportunity to clear my name today. No one other than my wife and Senator Danforth to whom I read this statement at 6:30 a.m., has seen or heard the statement. No handlers, no advisors. The first I learned of the allegations by Professor Anita Hill was on September 25th, 1991, when the FBI came to my home to investigate her allegations. When informed by the FBI agent of the nature of the allegations and the person making them, I was shocked, surprised, hurt, and enormously saddened. I have not been the same since that day. For almost a decade, my responsibilities included enforcing the rights of victims of sexual harassment. As a boss, as a friend, and as a human being, I was proud that I had never had such an allegation leveled against me, even as I sought to promote women and minorities into non-traditional jobs. In addition, several of my friends who are women have confided in me about the horror of harassment on the job or elsewhere. I thought I really understood the anguish, the fears, the doubts, the seriousness of the matter. But since September 25th, I have suffered immensely as these very serious charges were leveled against me. I have been racking my brains and eating my insides out, trying to think of what I could have said or done to Anita Hill to lead her to allege that I was interested in her in more than a professional way, and that I talked with her about pornographic or X-rated films. Contrary to some press reports, I categorically denied all of the allegations and denied that I ever attempted to date Anita Hill when first interviewed by the FBI. I strongly reaffirm that denial. Let me describe my relationship with Anita Hill. In 1981, after I went to the Department of Education as an assistant secretary in the Office of Civil Rights, one of my closest friends from both college and law school, Gil Hardy, brought Anita Hill to my attention. As I remember, he indicated that she was dissatisfied with her law firm and wanted to work in government. Based primarily, if not solely, on Gil's recommendation, I hired Anita Hill. During my tenure at the Department of Education, Anita Hill was an attorney advisor who worked directly with me. She worked on special projects as well as day-to-day matters. As I recall, she was one of two professionals working directly with me at the time. As a result, we worked closely on numerous matters. I recall being pleased with her work product and the professional but cordial relationship which we enjoyed at work. I also recall engaging in discussions about politics and current events. Upon my nomination to become chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Anita Hill, to the best of my recollection, assisted me in the nomination and confirmation process. After my confirmation, she and Diane Holt, then my secretary, joined me at EEOC. I do not recall that there was any question or doubt that she would become a special assistant to me at EEOC, although as a career employee, she retained the option of remaining at the Department of Education. At EEOC, our relationship was more distant and our contacts less frequent as a result of the increased size of my personal staff and the dramatic increase and diversity of my day-to-day responsibilities. Upon reflection, I recall that she seemed to have had some difficulty adjusting to this change in her role. In any case, our relationship remained both cordial and professional. At no time did I become aware, either directly or indirectly, that she felt I had said or done anything to change the cordial nature of our relationship. I detected nothing from her, or from my staff, or from Gil Hardy, our mutual friend, with whom I maintained regular contact. I am certain that had any statement or conduct on my part been brought to my attention, I would remember it clearly because of the nature and seriousness of such conduct, as well as my adamant opposition to sex discrimination and sexual harassment. But there were no such statements. In the spring of 1983, Mr. Charles Cothe contacted me to speak at the law school at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Anita Hill, who's from Oklahoma, accompanied me on that trip. It was not unusual that individuals on my staff would travel with me occasionally. Anita Hill accompanied me on that trip primarily because this was an opportunity to combine business and a visit to her home. As I recall, during our visit at Oral Roberts University, Mr. Cothe mentioned to me the possibility of approaching Anita Hill to join the faculty at Oral Roberts University Law School. I encouraged him to do so and noted to him, as I recall, that Anita Hill would do well in teaching. I recommended her highly, and she eventually was offered a teaching position. Although I did not see Anita Hill often after she left EEOC, I did see her on one or two subsequent visits to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And on one visit, I believe she drove me to the airport. I also occasionally received telephone calls from her. She would speak directly with me or with my secretary, Diane Holt. Since Anita Hill and Diane Holt had been with me at the Department of Education, they were fairly close personally, and I believe they occasionally socialized together. I would also hear about her through Linda Jackson, then Linda Lambert, whom both Anita Hill and I met at the Department of Education. And I would hear of her from my friend Gil. Throughout the time that Anita Hill worked with me, I treated her as I treated my other special assistants. I tried to treat them all cordially, professionally, and respectfully. And I tried to support them in their endeavors and be interested in and supportive of their success. I had no reason or basis to believe my relationship with Anita Hill was anything but this way until the FBI visited me a little more than 2 weeks ago. I find it particularly troubling that she never raised any hint that she was uncomfortable with me. She did not raise or mention it when considering moving with me to EEOC from the Department of Education. And she never raised it with me when she left EEOC and was moving on in her life. And to my fullest knowledge, she did not speak to any other women working with or around me who would feel comfortable enough to raise it with me, especially Diane Holt, to whom she seemed closest on my personal staff. Nor did she raise it with mutual friends such as Linda Jackson and Gil Hardy. This is a person I have helped at every turn in the road since we met. She seemed to appreciate the continued cordial relationship we had since day one. She sought my advice and counsel, as did virtually all of the members of my personal staff. During my tenure in the executive branch, as a manager, as a policymaker, and as a person, I have adamantly condemned sex harassment. There is no member of this committee or this Senate who feels stronger about sex harassment than I do. As a manager, I made every effort to take swift and decisive action when sex harassment raised or reared its ugly head. The fact that I feel so very strongly about sex harassment and spoke loudly about it at EEOC has made these allegations doubly hard on me. I cannot imagine anything that I said or did to Anita Hill that could have been mistaken for sexual harassment. But with that said, if there is anything that I have said that has been misconstrued by Anita Hill or anyone else to be sexual harassment, then I can say that I am so very sorry and I wish I had known. If I did know, I would have stopped immediately, and I would not, as I've done over the past 2 weeks, have to tear away at myself trying to think of what I could possibly have done. But I have not said or done the things that Anita Hill has alleged. God has gotten me through the days since September 25th, and he is my judge. Mr. Chairman, something has happened to me in the dark days that have followed since the FBI agents informed me about these allegations. And the days have grown darker as this very serious, very explosive, and very sensitive allegation, or these sensitive allegations, were selectively leaked in a distorted way to the media over the past weekend. As if the confidential allegations themselves were not enough, this apparently calculated public disclosure has caused me, my family, and my friends enormous pain and great harm. I have never in all my life felt such hurt, such pain, such agony. My family and I have been done a grave and irreparable injustice. During the past 2 weeks, I lost the belief that if I did my best, all would work out. I called upon the strength that helped me get here from Pinpoint, and it was all sapped out of me. It was sapped out of me because Anita Hill was a person I considered a friend, whom I admired and thought I had treated fairly and with the utmost respect. Perhaps I could have been better weathered this if it was from someone else, but here was someone I truly felt I had done my best with. Though I am by no means a perfect person, no means, I have not done what she has alleged. And I still don't know what I could possibly have done to cause her to make these allegations. When I stood next to the President in Kennebunkport, being nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States, that was a high honor. But as I sit here before you, 103 days later, that honor has been crushed. From the very beginning, charges were leveled against me from the shadows. Charges of drug abuse, anti-Semitism, wife beating, drug use by family members, that I was a quota appointment, confirmation conversion, and much, much more. And now, this. I have complied with the rules. I responded to a document request that produced over 30,000 pages of documents. And I have testified for 5 full days under oath. I have endured this ordeal for 103 days. Reporters sneaking into my garage to examine books I read. Reporters and interest groups swarming over divorce papers looking for dirt. Unnamed people starting preposterous and damaging rumors. Calls all over the country specifically requesting dirt. This is not American. This is Kafkaesque. It has got to stop. It must stop for the benefit of future nominees and our country. Enough is enough. I'm not going to allow myself to be further humiliated in order to be confirmed. I am here specifically to respond to allegations of sex harassment in the workplace. I am not here to be further humiliated by this committee or anyone else, or to put my private life on display for prurient interests or other reasons. I will not allow this committee or anyone else to probe into my private life. This is not what America is all about. To ask me to do that would be to ask me to go beyond fundamental fairness. Yesterday, I called my mother. She was confined to her bed, unable to work, and unable to stop crying. Enough is enough. Mr. Chairman, in my 43 years on this earth, I have been able, with the help of others and with the help of God, to defy poverty, avoid prison, overcome segregation, bigotry, racism, and obtain one of the finest educations available in this country. But I have not been able to overcome this process. This is worse than any obstacle or anything that I have ever faced. Throughout my life, I have been energized by the expectation and the hope that in this country, I would be treated fairly in all endeavors. When there was segregation, I hoped there would be fairness one day or someday. When there was bigotry and prejudice, I hoped that there would be tolerance and understanding someday. Mr. Chairman, I am proud of my life, proud of what I've done and what I've accomplished, proud of my family. And this process is trying to destroy it all. No job is worth what I've been through. No job. No horror in my life has been so debilitating. Confirm me if you want. Don't confirm me if you are so led. But let this process end. Let me and my family regain our lives. I never asked to be nominated. It was an honor. Little did I know the price, but it is too high. I enjoy and appreciate my current position, and I am comfortable with the prospect of returning to my work as a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeal for the D.C. Circuit, and to my friends there. Each of these positions is public service, and I have given at the office. I want my life and my family's life back, and I want them returned expeditiously. I have experienced the exhilaration of new heights from the moment I was called to Kennebunkport by the president to have lunch, and he nominated me. That was the high point. At that time, I was told eye to eye that, Clarence, you made it this far on merit. The rest is going to be politics. And it surely has been. There have been other highs. The outpouring of support from my friends of long standing. A bonding like I have never experienced with my old boss, Senator Danforth. The wonderful support of those who have worked with me. There have been prayers said for my family and me by people I know and people I will never meet. Prayers that were heard and that sustained not only me, but also my wife and my entire family. Instead of understanding and appreciating the great honor bestowed upon me, I find myself here today defending my name, my integrity, because somehow, select portions of confidential documents dealing with this matter were leaked to the public. Mr. Chairman, I am a victim of this process. My name has been harmed. My integrity has been harmed. My character has been harmed. My family has been harmed. My friends have been harmed. There is nothing this committee, this body, or this country can do to give me my good name back. Nothing. I will not provide the rope for my own lynching or for further humiliation. I am not going to engage in discussions, nor will I submit to roving questions of what goes on in the most intimate parts of my private life or the sanctity of my bedroom. These are the most intimate parts of my privacy, and they will remain just that, private.
Thank you, Judge. You will not be asked to. Before I begin my questioning of Judge Thomas, I would remind the committee and the nominee that with respect to one set of allegations, those pertaining to Professor Anita Hill, we are somewhat limited at this stage as to permissible questions. Professor Hill, as recently as late last night, continues to ask us to maintain the confidentiality of her statement to the committee. So, Judge Thomas, at this stage of the hearings, without having heard Professor Hill's testimony and without using her statement, our questioning to you may not be complete. We may have to discuss some aspects of the allegations with you at the end of these hearings. I would also note for the record that the choice of the order of these hearings was left to you. I asked whether or not you wish to go first or second, first and last, and you chose, as is your right, to speak first, and then, if you so chose, speak last. Therefore, with respect to Professor Hill, I intend to focus on the general nature of your relationship with her, her responsibilities in your office, and the environment in which she worked. So, Judge, you've spoken to some of these issues in your opening statement, but let me ask you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. I just want to say something for the record here. This is not the appointment of a justice of the peace. This is the nomination process of a man to become Supreme Court Justice of the United States. And he's been badly maligned. And I might add that I have a lot of sympathy for Professor Hill, too. But I'm not going to sit here and tolerate her attorneys telling you or me or anybody else that now that she's made these statements in writing with what is, if the judge is telling the truth, and I believe he is, scurrilous allegations, that statement can't be used, especially in this proceeding. It's a matter of fairness, and I might add that I've been informed that the reporter who broke this story has her statement read it to her before she would even talk to her. Now, it would be the greatest travesty I've ever seen in any court of law, let alone an open forum, in the nomination process of a man for justice of the United States Supreme Court, to allow her attorneys, or her, or anybody on this committee, or anybody else for that matter, to tell us what can or cannot be used now that this man's reputation has been very badly hurt.
Well, Senator,
No, I'm not finished. I intend to use that statement because it is fair to use it. I don't want to hurt...
Senator, let me
finish.
No, I will not.
Well, yes, you will.
Let me make
Yes,
a
you
point.
will.
Let me just make one. You're entitled to use the statement under the rules. No one, the chair, cannot stop you from using the statement.
Well, then
right.
the statement is going to be admissible to everybody. Everybody in this country is going to see it.
Chairman, how can she request confidentiality at this point?
When she said she...
Let me, if I can answer that question. Professor Hill says that she wants to tell her story. She did not release the statement, she says, and she wants her story told by her. Because we have given the opportunity the judge to speak first, if he so chose, and he has, that she wants to be able to use her statement in her own words that she has thus far not released and has not spoken to publicly. She has not spoken to publicly when she comes and addresses the committee. Now, why don't we get on with this process?
Well, Mr.
You
Chairman,
I'm not finished.
Mr. Chairman, let me say, wait just a minute.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, she has been on television telling her story. She's made it public. So therefore, I think the right to use that statement ought to be admitted.
Mr. Chairman.
No, Mr. Chairman, I didn't relinquish the floor. I did to the chairman because the
Yes,
chairman... I want to finish my comment.
Let the senator from Massachusetts, then we'll go back to everybody's going to get a chance to say
all right,
whatever.
if you'll come back
It seems
to me, I'd
to
appreciate
me that you outlined a reasonable way of proceeding. I think it's entirely proper that Judge Thomas be able to make what statement that he so desired. And I thought it was a very moving statement, Judge. It might be appropriate, if that is the desire, that at least we work out in terms of the committee and the committee's understanding the way that we're going to proceed on this. As I understand, the professor had indicated willing to testify first or go second, and now we're in the situation where Judge Thomas has spoken. And it seems to me that we ought to be able to work out at least the way that we're going to proceed that is going to be respectful both of Judge Thomas and the witness without getting into a lot of back and forth up here, which is not really the purpose of the hearing. And what I might suggest, at least, is that we have a very brief recess so that we can at least find out a way that we can proceed that is consistent with Judge Thomas, consistent with the others, and satisfactory to the way that the committee...
Mr. Chairman,
The senator from Utah.
I object to a recess. The fact of the matter is, last Tuesday, a substantial majority of the Senate frankly asked us to get to the bottom of this. The public deserves to know now, one way or the other. And the public's going to know if I have anything to say about it. Our colleagues demanded it. They didn't ask us to just find out so much as the witness will allow us to ask. And I have no intention of pillaring or maligning Professor Hill. I feel sorry for both of these people. Both of them are going to come out of this with less of a reputation. It's pathetic, and it wouldn't have happened. Let me finish, if I could. If somebody on this committee or their staff had the honesty and the integrity before the vote to raise this issue and ask for an executive session and say this has to be brought out, nobody did. And then somebody on this committee or their staff, and I'm outraged by it, leaked that report, an FBI report that we all know should never be disclosed to the public because of the materials that generally are in them. They take it down as it's given. It's got raw stuff in it, that it's been leaked. Half the media knows everything in it. And I think the American people are entitled to know if they want to. And what I'm trying to say is that, to be frank, Mr. Chairman, there are inconsistencies in the statement of Anita Hill to the FBI compared to her other statements. I don't particularly intend to go into that. She's entitled to explain these discrepancies. But Judge Thomas is entitled to point out these inconsistencies for their bearing on the credibility of the accuser in this instance. Nice person though she may be, good law professor though she may be, fellow Yale law graduate though she may be.
Senator,
and the statement, if I could just finish, the statement, I promise to be shorter. The statements of the subsequent witnesses are also at variance with Professor Hill's statements, with what she told the FBI. If she happens to testify differently today, we have to find out which of those statements are true. Now,
Senator, we are not at liberty to publicly discuss what's in the FBI report. Her statement is a different story.
We're not. This report's been leaked to the press. They know about it. Part of it's been read to the accuser in this case. I think it's time to be fair to the nominee. He's come this far. He's the one who's being accused. They have the burden of showing that he's not telling the truth here, and he has a right to face the accuser and everything that accuser says. And if he doesn't, then I'm going to resign from this committee today. I'm telling you, I don't want to be on it.
The Senate's in recess. The hearing is in recess for 5 minutes.
Let's go back here.
Well, you certainly get some sense at the beginning of this as to how tense, how politically charged, how many ramifications there are of this hearing. Senator Hatch of Utah saying there just a moment ago that both the judge and Professor Hill will be harmed by this. That, of course, is Senator John Danforth, who is Judge Thomas's chief sponsor in the Senate, discussing these procedures with the judge and his wife, and that's Senator Hatch going over. Senator Hatch has been very outspoken on the judge's behalf during the whole nomination procedure up until now. I want to go briefly to our correspondent on Capitol Hill, Jim Wooten. Jim, I recognize that so much of this is speculative, but sounds a little bit here like they couldn't work out a deal in private before this hearing began about order and testimony and how it might be handled. So Senator Hatch has decided to do it in public.
Oh, exactly, Peter. That's exactly what has gone on. As I said earlier, they have tried and failed to bring some order to the sequence of witnesses and the testimony. It has been fraught with politics, with ill will, with rancor right from the very beginning, despite all of their efforts and all of their proclamations that they were working together to work this out fairly and quickly. What Senator Hatch has done this morning is simply to raise the question of the use of her statement in such a forceful way that I expect that's exactly what is going to happen when we return.
One of the things we, of course, might remind people as they watch these proceedings, or the lack of proceedings at the moment, is that these senators are all profoundly intelligent men on this committee. In many cases, they're all lawyers. Senator Hatch is a lawyer. Howell Heflin, who's going to ask questions for the Democrats, is a former Chief Justice of Alabama. Senator Patrick Leahy, a former prosecutor from the state of Vermont. But all of them very skilled and very accomplished performers as well in public. I'd ask you, Jim, whether or not you know Orrin Hatch well. This is heartfelt anger we are seeing here?
Oh, clearly. And this threat to resign, I would say, is probably very sincere, although I don't think he believes it will come to that. His view of the statement is that it's out there, that the public has read it, that the press has seen it, that certainly the reporter from National Public Radio had access to it when she first interviewed Ms. Hill more than a week ago. That's real anger you're seeing from Senator Hatch, and I expect you're going to see some real anger from some of the Democrats.
And just while we're looking at Judge Thomas and Senator Danforth discussing the proceedings, let us remind you about some of the deep pain which Judge Thomas spoke about. He said that the 103 days so far of his confirmation process have been, in his words, Kafkaesque. This is not America, he said. This must stop. Enough is enough. He said, I'm not here to be humiliated. I will not allow this committee to probe into my private life. To ask me to do so would be to ask me to go beyond fundamental fairness. If you have been with us for the last hour, and these hearings began almost an hour ago, you have heard the judge categorically deny in every instance the allegations, as we know the allegations, made against him by Professor Hill.